would you do this to me? Get out of my house!
Wait, honey, please. It's not what you think.
Elena was driving to the grocery store when she suddenly froze. In the lane beside her, a navy blue Tesla glided past. It was Mark's car, her husband's car. License plate, Vance 1. The problem was, Mark was supposed to be in San Francisco for a finance conference. He had FaceTimed her just 2 hours earlier from a sunlit hotel room. Elena swerved. She followed the Tesla into the parking lot of a Target 20 miles from their house. She pulled her cap low and kept her distance. Mark walked inside, and he didn't look like a man on a business trip. He looked like a man getting ready for a night out. She hid behind the housewares aisle, her heart pounding in her throat. Mark stopped at the lingerie section. He picked up a red lace nightgown, examined it, then tossed it into his cart. Next, he went straight to the pharmacy counter, grabbed a large box of Trojan condoms, and paid quickly in cash. Elena rushed back to her car before he could see her. She drove home like a maniac, her hands clenched so tightly around the steering wheel they turned white. The moment she stepped through the door, she flung her keys onto the floor and collapsed onto the couch in the empty living room. 15 years of marriage, 1 son, a perfect life in Oakwood. All of it evaporated because of a box of condoms and a nightgown that wasn't her size. 10 minutes later, Elena's phone buzzed. Mark. Hey, babe. His voice was warm on speaker. San Francisco is so boring. I wish you were here. Give our son a kiss for me, okay? Good night. Elena stared at the screen. She took a deep breath, her voice terrifyingly calm. Good night, Mark. You should get some rest, too. Business trips must be exhausting. Inside his room, Leo, 15, was completely absorbed in his own world. He wore an expensive pair of noise-canceling headphones, eyes locked on his computer screen as he played a game. Leo was a perfect copy of Mark. Sandy blonde hair, a sharp nose, and the look of a suburban golden boy. He was at the age where admiration for a successful father had turned into something close to worship. To Leo, Mark was a hero, the man who taught him how to throw a football, how to drive, and how to be a gentleman. Elena stood in the doorway looking at her son's back. She wanted to walk in, to hold him, to scream that their family was nothing but ashes. But she stopped. The glow of the screen reflected on Leo's innocent face, and she realized something. This child wouldn't believe her. To Leo, his mother was the one who nagged about grades and healthy meals, while his father was the one who brought home the latest gadgets and exciting secrets. Quietly, she closed the door, leaving Leo inside the false peace Mark had worked so hard to build. Back in the master bedroom, Elena walked over to the vanity. Under the soft yellow light sat a gold-framed wedding photo. In it was Elena at 24, radiant, ambitious, holding her honors law degree from a prestigious university. Now at 40, the woman in the mirror still looked youthful thanks to expensive skincare treatments, but the fire in her eyes was gone. 15 years ago, she had been a rising star at a top law firm in Manhattan. But when Mark got promoted and Leo was born, she made a trade-off she called a sacrifice for love. She gave up million-dollar cases and moved to the suburbs, becoming a full-time housewife. For the past 15 years, her job had been making sure every Oakwood dinner party was flawless so Mark would impress his partners, managing the household finances, paying tuition and driving Leo back and forth to practice, tending the garden and making sure every one of Mark's shirts was perfectly pressed, without a single wrinkle. She had turned herself into a flawless support system so Mark could climb the power ladder at the bank without distraction. She opened the photo album on the shelf. Every page showed luxury trips to Paris, cozy Christmas holidays. In every picture, Mark Vance appeared to be the perfect husband. He was 6'1" with a sunlit smile and eyes that always looked at Elena with affection. Mark was the kind of man who could make any woman feel like she was the only one in the world. Elena took a deep breath. She told herself, it's probably just a meaningless fling. Powerful men make mistakes. She wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him to keep her world from collapsing. 2 days later, Mark came home. He walked through the door with his usual radiant smile. He pulled Elena into a tight embrace, kissed her like the most faithful husband in the world. He handed her a limited edition Hermes bag and gave Leo an expensive Lego set. The trip was a huge success, babe, Mark said. His voice was deep, warm, and utterly convincing. I'm going to take a shower. I'm exhausted from all the flights. He tossed his suitcase onto the bed and disappeared into the bathroom. The sound of running water filled the room. Elena stood there, staring at the suitcase. Her hands trembled as she pulled the zipper open. She began taking out the dirty clothes, checking every corner, every hidden zippered pocket, every layer of lining. There was nothing. The red nightgown was gone. The box of condoms was gone. The suitcase was perfectly clean, which meant those items had been left somewhere else, or rather, given to someone. Just then, Mark's phone lit up on the table, an Instagram notification from a woman. Elena glanced at the screen. It was a photo of a girl raising a champagne glass in a luxury restaurant. On her wrist was a sparkling diamond bracelet. Elena stared at Mark's phone. The photo showed a slender, sensual back wrapped in the same red lace nightgown she had seen at the store. The woman stood by the window of a high-end apartment, the hazy city lights behind her accentuating her curves. Her face wasn't visible, only long hair cascading down, covering half of her bare shoulder. The caption was shamelessly provocative. "Best weekend ever with my man. He knows how to make me feel like a queen." Elena felt as if someone had dumped a bucket of ice water over her. She didn't know who this woman was. Her Instagram was private, the name EM_9X completely unfamiliar, but the dress was unmistakable. It was proof that Mark had spent his so-called business trip with this woman. The water in the bathroom shut off. The door opened. Mark stepped out, steam rising from his toned body. He looked refreshed, energized, nothing like a man who had just returned from a stressful work trip. He looked at Elena, his smile as charming as ever. "Hey babe, what's going on with the suitcase?" Elena quickly set the phone down, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. She gripped Mark's shirt and forced a fake smile. "Nothing, love. I was just about to take the laundry out. This Hermes bag is beautiful. You're so thoughtful." Mark laughed and leaned in to kiss her forehead. "You deserve the best, Elena." That entire evening, Elena felt like a ghost in her own home. She served steak, poured wine, and listened to Mark talk about his meetings in San Francisco with a calmness that was almost terrifying. In her mind, there was only one question: who is she? For the next month, Elena turned herself into a silent shadow. She checked Mark's browser history, credit card statements, even his airline miles, but everything was impossibly clean. Mark remained the perfect husband, coming home on time, kissing his wife before bed, never missing Leo's games. She began to gaslight herself. Maybe it really was just an incident in San Francisco, a one-time fling with some nameless girl. Men in Mark's position were sometimes like that. Everything truly shattered on a sunny Thursday afternoon. Earlier, Elena's mother-in-law had been seriously ill, and Elena had stayed with her in another state for 3 weeks. During that time, driving Leo to his private piano lessons at Emily's place had been Mark's responsibility. Today, after her mother-in-law recovered, Elena decided to surprise her son. She arrived at Emily's apartment 15 minutes early. Emily's condo was in a high-end complex for affluent young professionals. Elena stepped inside as Leo's piano echoed through the inner room, Chopin's notes light and crystalline. Emily poured her a cup of Earl Grey tea and smiled gently. "Elena, your mother-in-law is doing much better now, right?" "She's doing well now, thank you," Elena replied, her eyes drifting around the apartment decorated in a minimalist style that nevertheless screamed expensive. Her gaze stopped on an oak bookshelf positioned right next to the piano. On the top shelf, oddly out of place among stacks of classical sheet music, lay a men's wristwatch with a dark brown leather strap, its sapphire crystal gleaming under the light. Elena's heart skipped a beat. She stepped closer, pretending to admire a decorative sculpture beside it. It was a limited edition Patek Philippe. There was no way she could mistake it. She herself had chosen it as Mark's 10th wedding anniversary gift. The most distinctive detail was a tiny V-shaped scratch near the crown, left behind when Mark once fell while hiking with her. The same watch Mark had claimed that morning he'd forgotten in the gym locker and would pick up after work. Elena felt her hands begin to tremble. She glanced at Emily. The young teacher was still smiling, her slender fingers tapping gently to Leo's piano rhythm. The diamond bracelet on her wrist sparkled brazenly. Every piece of the puzzle snapped together with cruel precision. Mark hadn't had a casual fling. The watch lay there, unapologetic, like a silent declaration. Mark considered this place his home. Elena took a deep breath, forcing down the nausea rising in her throat. She turned back to Emily, her voice eerily calm. "That watch is beautiful, Emily. Your boyfriend must be a very generous man." Emily hesitated slightly, a flicker of unease crossing her eyes before she recovered. "Yes, he's very thoughtful, just like Mark, your husband." Elena smiled, the smile of someone who had just found her opponent's fatal weakness. She understood now that the past month of silence hadn't been weakness, it had been preparation for passing a death sentence on this marriage. Elena didn't pick up the watch. She knew that if she did, Emily would call Mark immediately, and he would have 100 excuses ready. She needed undeniable proof. Elena said lightly, her cold gaze brushing over the Patek Philippe. That watch seems to be set to the wrong time zone. Your boyfriend must have just gotten back from a business trip, right? San Francisco, maybe. Emily faltered again, her hands tightening slightly around the hem of her floral dress. Yes, he travels a lot. I don't really pay attention. Elena nodded, as if understanding. Just then, Leo came out, beaming. Mom, I didn't expect you to pick me up. I just finished practicing the nocturne. Elena hugged her son, but her eyes remained fixed on Emily. You did great, Leo. Let's go home. Dad's waiting for us. Leo chattered non-stop about how Emily was the best teacher in the world. You know, Mom, Miss Emily says I have natural talent. She even lets me borrow some rare recordings she owns. Elena looked at her son sideways. The 15-year-old was completely enchanted by Emily's pure, gentle image. She realized Mark wasn't just cheating, he was using Emily to quietly reprogram her son, shaping Leo's idea of femininity around someone like Emily, in contrast to a mother who enforced discipline. At home, 8 p.m., Mark walked in, sharp and confident in his expensive suit. He leaned in and kissed Elena of the cheek. Did you find your watch at the gym? Elena asked, chopping onions with her back turned to him.
Mark paused for a split second. Barely noticeable, but enough for a lawyer like Elena. Oh, yeah, I did. I left it in my office drawer instead. Safer that way. Liar, Elena thought. The watch was still sitting on Emily's bookshelf, and Mark had just dug his own grave with an unnecessary lie. That night, after Mark had fallen sound asleep, Elena picked up Leo's iPad. She knew Leo and Emily frequently communicated through an online music learning app. She dug into the deleted messages still cached in the cloud. One message from Emily to Leo, sent a week earlier while Elena was away caring for her mother-in-law, read, Leo, let's skip class this afternoon. Your dad said something urgent came up, so he'll stop by my place to talk about your study plan. Elena checked Mark's car location history for that same afternoon. His car had been parked in Emily's apartment garage for 4 hours. Just then, a new notification popped up on Mark's phone, charging on the nightstand. Elena glanced at it. Emily, you forgot your watch at my place. Come get it tomorrow, my music man. I miss you. Elena looked at the man sleeping beside her. She didn't cry. The anger had hardened into a terrifying clarity. She took out her own phone, snapped a photo of the message on his screen, then quietly placed Mark's phone back where it had been. She stepped out onto the balcony, staring at the quiet suburban horizon. Tomorrow morning, she wouldn't be going to the grocery store. She would be meeting Jackson Wright, the most ruthless divorce lawyer in the city, the man who specialized in destroying billionaire husbands who like to cheat. As Elena turned to go back inside, she saw Leo standing in the hallway, staring straight at her. What were you doing with Dad's phone? Leo's voice rang out, full of suspicion and distance. Elena froze. This war wasn't just between her and Mark anymore. Leo had already been pulled onto the other side without her even realizing it. She stood motionless under the dim hallway light. Leo's eyes studied her the same way Mark's did whenever he was hiding a lie. I was just checking the alarm, Elena said calmly, placing the phone back where it belonged. Your dad said he has an early meeting tomorrow. Why are you still awake? Leo crossed his arms, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You always have to control everything. Dad's right. You never let anyone have any peace. The words stabbed straight through Elena. Mark had begun poisoning the child's mind. He was turning her into the villain in her own son's eyes, clearing the path for Emily. Elena didn't argue. She stepped closer and gently ruffled Leo's hair. Go to sleep. You've got an early piano lesson tomorrow. Elena didn't confront him. She waited. She waited until Mark had fallen into a deep sleep after another exhausting business trip. In the darkness of his home office, she opened his laptop. Mark was arrogant. He believed his wife had become so domesticated she would never touch complex financial data again. He had forgotten that before she became his wife, she had been one of the top attorneys specializing in financial crimes. Using data recovery software, Elena accessed hidden folders disguised as the bank's real estate projects. Her professional instincts immediately sensed something wrong when she saw the sudden spike in expenses labeled art consulting. She began cross-checking tax identification numbers and uncovered a massive hole. Millions of dollars had been approved by Mark for sham art purchases. And then the truth appeared coldly on the screen. Every stream of dirty money flowed to a single destination: the Muse Art Gallery. Owner, Mark. Purchases: $1,000.
Emily Miller. It turned out her son's piano lessons were the most disgusting cover of all. While Emily sat beside Leo teaching him refined musical notes, on another level she was helping Mark launder embezzled bank funds by auctioning worthless paintings at obscene prices. Those paintings weren't art. They were disguised invoices for betrayal. Mark wasn't just cheating, he was turning their home and their son's future into part of a financial crime ring. Elena pulled out a USB drive and copied every cash flow spreadsheet and original data file Mark hadn't yet deleted. She looked out the window where streetlights cast shadows over the piano in the living room. Disgust rose in her throat as she realized that every gift Mark had bought her, every lavish dinner, had been paid for with dirty money, washed clean through the hands of his seemingly pure mistress. The next morning, Elena walked into her close friend Julian's law office with a completely expressionless face. She placed the USB drive containing everything copied from Mark's computer on the desk. It was a perfect indictment for money laundering through Emily's art gallery. I want a divorce. I want Mark to walk away with nothing, and most importantly, I need full custody of my son, Elena said, getting straight to the point. Julian skimmed through the files, then sighed and looked at her with the concern of a seasoned attorney. Elena, financially you have the upper hand, but when it comes to custody, you're at a serious disadvantage. Elena frowned. Why? He's a cheater and a financial criminal. Julian slid another folder across the desk. It was a psychological report and surveillance records Mark had been secretly preparing for months. Emotional abandonment by the mother. Mark had gathered evidence showing that over the past 3 months, Elena was frequently absent from home. In reality, she had been caring for her sick mother-in-law, leaving Leo in the care of his father and the piano teacher. Psychological manipulation. Leo now trusted his father completely. Mark had carefully shaped an image of Elena as an overbearing, cold mother who didn't understand her son's artistic passion. The child's testimony. At 15, an American court would take Leo's wishes into consideration. Julian emphasized, if this goes to court now, Leo will choose to live with his father. Mark has made himself the hero in your son's eyes and you the villain who's always controlling. If you expose Mark for money laundering right now, Julian continued, he'll be arrested, but Leo will hate you for the rest of his life for sending his father to prison. You'll win the case, but you'll lose your son forever. Elena went silent. This was Mark's most vicious move. He hadn't just betrayed her, he had taken her son's soul hostage. She realized she couldn't use the law to reclaim her child's heart. You need a different plan, Julian suggested. You have to make Leo see Mark and Emily's true faces on his own, without it coming from you. You need an event that causes their angelic masks to shatter right in front of him. Elena looked down at the USB drive. She understood she had to keep acting. She had to return to that house, smile at the man who betrayed her, and pretend to be a mother trying to reconnect, while quietly staging a performance that Mark and Emily would never be able to deny. Elena didn't choose to catch them in some random place. She used the bank's anniversary gala, where Mark was basking in the glory of a successful vice president. She requested that Emily perform piano as a tribute to our son's wonderful teacher. Mark, in his arrogance, believed Elena was completely under his control. Near the end of the evening, Elena gently asked Leo to find his father to retrieve the car keys that had been forgotten in the private balcony area behind the main hall. She watched from afar as her son's slender figure walked toward the half-closed door. Through the crack, Leo froze. He witnessed his model father passionately embracing and kissing Emily. Emily's giggles and Mark's intimate whispers about a new future with just the two of them pierced the heart of the 15-year-old like knives. In the suffocating air of the ballroom, Elena felt her heart pounding harder than ever. She didn't let Leo face it alone. She tightly held her son's hand, took a deep breath, and decisively pushed open the VIP lounge door. The scene inside unfolded like a nauseating slow-motion film. Mark and Emily tangled together, their heat making the sound of the opening door feel surreal. When the hallway lights spilled in, they sprang apart in panic. Emily hurriedly adjusted her disheveled dress, her usual pure expression replaced by sheer terror. Mark stood frozen, reeking of alcohol, eyes wide as he stared at his wife and son standing in the doorway. "Mom?" Leo choked out, then turned his face away. No one said another word. Elena pulled her son past them, leaving the gala behind in the stunned silence of two traitors. The moment they entered the villa's living room, Mark lunged forward and grabbed Elena's hand, his face contorted with fear of losing his reputation. He began to grovel, his voice shaking. "Elena, let me explain. I was wrong. I drank too much. Tonight was so stressful. I lost control. Emily, she was just there when I was drunk. I swear I don't have any feelings for her. For our family, for Leo, please forgive me this one time." Elena jerked her hand away and slammed a stack of photos onto the table, shots of the watch and his repeated visits to Emily's apartment. Drunk. Drunk for 6 straight months while you kept her as your mistress? Drunk while you bought her diamonds with money meant for our son's future? Seeing the irrefutable evidence, Mark went rigid. The fake remorse vanished instantly. He straightened up, his eyes turning sharp and calculating. He let out a cold laugh, his mask dropping so fast it made Leo shudder. "Fine. If you already know everything, then I don't need to pretend anymore. What do you want? A divorce?" He stepped closer to Elena, his voice dripping with threat. "I'll warn you, Elena. You're just a housewife who's been out of the profession for 15 years. Everything here, from this mansion to the bank accounts, is under my name or my company's. If you choose divorce, I'll use the best lawyers to make sure you walk away with nothing. No money, no house, and most importantly, I'll prove you don't have the financial means to raise Leo. Do you want you and your son out on the street?" Seeing her silence, he assumed he'd won. "Just stay Mrs. Vance and you'll keep your wealth and comfort. But if you challenge me, you'll end up with nothing. Do you really think you're still the legendary lawyer you were all those years ago?" Elena looked at the man in front of her, utterly unafraid. The corner of her mouth lifted into a cold smile that made Mark uneasy. "You've forgotten one thing, Mark. 15 years ago, I wasn't just a lawyer. I was the one who taught you how to exploit loopholes to build this empire. I know where you hid your assets before you even thought about hiding them." Mark stormed toward her, his face flushed with rage and humiliation. He raised his hand to strike her. "You dare threaten me? Who do you think you are in this house?" But before his hand could come down, it was shoved aside with force. Leo, the quiet son who had always obeyed his father, had rushed forward to stand between them. His eyes were red, but his gaze was firm, filled with heartbreak and resolve. "Don't touch my mom," Leo shouted, his voice shaking but unwavering. "I saw everything. I heard everything. You're not the father I was proud of. You're just a pathetic traitor." Mark froze, his trembling hands falling to his side. The contempt in his son's eyes hurt more than any sentence ever could. Elena remained steady. She opened a drawer and took out a folder she had prepared long ago. She slid a yellow document, worn by time, across the table toward Mark. "Do you remember this document, Mark?" Elena said calmly. 10 years ago, when you were just starting your own company and needed me to personally guarantee your loans, you signed a general power of attorney with no expiration date, authorizing me to sign all financial documents on your behalf whenever you were away on business." Mark's face strained from red to deathly pale. He had completely forgotten that the document even existed. "You were too arrogant to ever revoke it," Elena continued, her voice sharp as a blade. 2 hours ago, right after we left the gala, I used that power of attorney to freeze all of your personal accounts and file an emergency hold on every asset transfer under your company. Right now, you can't withdraw a single dollar to give to Emily or to hire your expensive lawyers. Elena stood up and gathered the folder. "You're right. After the divorce, one of us will have nothing, but it won't be me. You will have nothing. Leo and I will keep everything you spent years building. Tomorrow, my lawyer, Julian, will be here. You have 2 choices. Sign the uncontested divorce papers and leave with the clothes on your back, or face public exposure of your affair and your misuse of family funds before the bank's board of directors." Mark collapsed onto the sofa, completely broken. He stared at his wife, the woman he had once believed worn down by domestic life, now standing before him like a queen reclaiming her kingdom. Despite his shamelessness, Elena still left him a final shred of dignity. Coldly, she said, "For the sake of our 15 years together, and so Leo doesn't have to see his father sleeping on the street, I'm leaving you this house. Sign the papers and disappear from our lives." 3 days later, as Elena was packing the last of her belongings to move with her son, the doorbell rang insistently. It was Emily. Gone was the gentle, pure image she once projected. Emily looked hollow, frantic. The moment she saw Elena, she lunged forward and grabbed her hand, screaming, "Where's Mark? Where is he? Why did he block my number? Why did he disappear?" Elena calmly pulled her hand away, her eyes filled with contempt. "You think you've won? Look." Her hands trembled as she pulled a test result from her bag. "I'm pregnant. The baby is Mark's. He can't abandon me now. What did you do to him? Did you take all his money so he ran away?" Elena glanced at the test result and smirked faintly. She wasn't surprised, nor was she hurt. She leaned in close to Emily and whispered, "Do you really think a broke, cowardly man like Mark would choose you and a child? He's avoiding you because he can't even support himself anymore, let alone you. He never loved you. What he loved was the money he used you to launder." Elena opened the door and pointed toward the street. "Mark is still in this house, but he's locked himself inside since yesterday. If you want, feel free to go in and take care of your successful man. Congratulations, you can have what I just threw away." Emily stood frozen as Elena calmly got into the car with Leo. She rushed inside to find Mark, only to be met with suffocating silence. Only then did Emily realize that the man she had sacrificed her dignity for was nothing more than an empty shell, once stripped of the capable wife who had upheld everything. Before leaving, Elena casually handed Emily a small check, or some cash. "This is support money for the child. Consider it payment for helping me see my husband's true face sooner. I'm leaving the house to him. You're welcome to move in." 2 years later, Elena had fully reclaimed her status as a prominent attorney. She lived in a luxury apartment downtown, and Leo had grown into a young man preparing for college. One afternoon, Julian called her, his tone grave. "Elena, Mark's been arrested. The bank uncovered the missing funds from his time in office. From what I hear, life with Emily these past few years has been a nightmare." After Elena left, Mark and Emily moved in together at the old villa. They had a baby girl, but the child brought no happiness, only more tension. Mark went from a powerful vice president to an unemployed drunk, spending his days blaming Emily for ruining his life. Emily had long since lost her innocent facade, screaming in regret as she realized that the successful man she had stolen was nothing more than a coward. When the police stormed the house and arrested Mark for his past financial fraud, Emily stood there numb, holding their crying child. No one posted bail. No money was left to hire a lawyer. Mark was taken to prison in complete social isolation. At the prison visitation room, Elena appeared behind the glass, composed and elegant. The sight of his ex-wife completely shattered Mark. He was gaunt, hollow-eyed, trembling as he picked up the phone. "Elena, thank you for coming. I know I don't deserve it, but I truly regret everything. Being in here made me realize you were the only one who ever genuinely cared about me. Emily, she took the baby and left the moment I was arrested. She only wanted money." Elena looked at him silently. There was no hatred left in her eyes, only indifference, as if she were looking at a stranger. Mark sobbed uncontrollably. "Can you help me one last time? Just get me a lawyer to reduce my sentence, for Leo's sake, please." Elena sighed softly, her voice steady through the receiver. "Mark, I didn't come here to help you. I came to give myself a final answer. You mentioned Leo, the child whose future you once tried to use as a shield for your selfishness. Leo is doing very well now. He doesn't remember you at all anymore, and I intend to keep it that way." She stood up and adjusted her elegant coat. "You're right. Emily only wanted money, but you forget that you taught her that. You are reflections of each other. This sentence wasn't handed down by the bank. You signed it yourself 15 years ago, the moment you began deceiving me." Mark slammed his hands against the glass, screaming and begging, but Elena had already turned and walked away. The sound of her heels echoed proudly down the prison corridor. As she stepped outside, sunlight flooded her face. Elena put on her sunglasses and got into the car, where Leo was waiting to celebrate his newly awarded scholarship. In life, we often see women choose to step back, sacrificing their careers to support their husbands. Elena did the same. She gave 15 years of her youth to her family, but Mark's greatest mistake was believing that her departure from the workplace meant she had lost her intelligence and strength. The greatest lesson here is this: never turn yourself into a parasite. True freedom doesn't come from how much money you have in the bank, it comes from whether you have the ability to start over. Elena won because she never let her mind retire. When she was backed into a corner, she didn't beg with tears, she fought back with knowledge. She teaches us that the most devastating form of revenge isn't shouting or insults, but proud indifference. Any castle built on sand, no matter how magnificent, will collapse when the tide of truth comes in. Real happiness must be built on respect and understanding, not on schemes and deception.